Yes, my name is Chase, which means a good woods for hunting. So that's a place, right? It's describing a place. My last name is Langford, which originally, if you go back a few hundred years, it was actually Longford, which is a wide river crossing. So both of my names are geographic, right? Describing a place, a specific place. So having said that, I grew up in Michigan. As a kid, I was just a map freak and drew them and studied them. And in third grade, they did a news day where people would read a clipping from the newspaper, and the teacher had me stand up by the map. And whenever a place was mentioned, I would point it out. So I was like, quite the map geek. Anyway, so that was kind of fun because I just thought it was so exciting. I knew where Madagascar was when I was in the third grade. That's decent, I guess. I studied cartography at UC Santa Barbara and actually practiced as a cartographer at UCLA. I had an amazing position there, working with faculty that did further research work. So it was all new information or new ideas. So that was invigorating. It wasn't static like I worked for drew roadmaps all the time. It was always very creative and dynamic space and rich environment. But while I was doing that, all those years, I was also always painting. And actually, even before I left UCL, I had quite a viable career, having a lot of shows and so forth, working quite intensely in the studio. Anyway, so let me just quickly explain my work. I'm an abstract painter, but so much does come out of cartography, out of my map making, because I'm so consumed by it. So it's a big part of how I see things, particularly abstract work and so forth. To the extent of, at our house in Rancho Mirage, here, Palm Springs, California, we have a stone floor, and it's all these free-form pieces of stone. And as I walk along it, I go, oh yeah, there's the Arabian Peninsula, there's South Carolina, there's Nebraska, and that's what comes to mind. So, but that's just to explain a little bit of my thinking, but my abstract work draws from that, but it's not literal, of course. This isn't a painting of a view of Saddle Junction, which is a high point above Palm Springs and Mount San Jacinto. This is called Gibraltar, and it pulls a lot of the energy of what Gibraltar's like, the big rock outcropping with the waves and kind of dealing with the sea and so forth. So there's a loose connection, but the most important thing is really that I'm creating my own language, my own expression that's visual, and everyone has a visual sensibility. Why did you choose that shirt or paint your room a certain color? You have feelings about all that, and like everyone, I have visual feelings and a visual sensibility. So these paintings they're really a evolution. They're kind of very meta, and Metacarto, it's sort of this ever-evolving, self-referential sort of journey that is influenced by cartography. So that's hence the name. I don't think it's a made-up word. I made it up. But that way it's easy to Google, right? Or something like that. It's distinctive. So that's kind of the deal. The works here, they're derived from all over, a lot of influences, but again, it's very indirect. There's a large painting behind you that's by the desk there. That one, and then the middle painting, there's three paintings up here that you can look at later, but the middle one and the one over there are very much like the museum just acquired a large painting of mine. Probably double, say if you double this for their permanent collection. They're much like those, to give you an idea of what they were attracted to. And just real quickly, I'll talk about my process, and then we can just open it up for questions, okay? How about that? So I start out, I'll just use Gibraltar as an example. Gibraltar and all these works, I start out very loosely. You can't create, and I can't personally, maybe you can, but I can't preconceive every brushstroke in advance, right? It's a process. So what I do is I throw down paint, but I throw down paint in a very organized way that is how I think I should throw it down, but it's very loose, and then it gives me something to react to. Then I start seeing forms that I want to accentuate. This probably developed quite early and then was enhanced over and over time, right? And then there were maybe other areas with other features that got obliterated because you can't have something going on everywhere. So all these paintings evolve that way. There's many iterations. The early ones look like just mud, and then they start to coalesce, and I start enhancing and improving areas. The other thing that's going on that I think is maybe just a kind of widely held concept is that rich colors I tend to have more towards the center. I want you to look at a painting for the most part and kind of keep falling back into it, So they tend to soften at the edges, and the objects and the brighter colors tend to be more in the middle. So it pulls your eye back in, and you kind of do this loop. These stronger features may grab you at first, and then you might wander off, but then they pull you back in. So that's the idea with that. And again, just really quickly about color. You can have these rich colors, but you can't have everything rich, bright colors, right? At least personally, that's how I feel. So these gray tones and these kind of dull whites and so forth are there to help organize the space, but also set off the richer colors so that you have a composition. I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
I just wondered, do you work on one at a time? Do you kind of have multiple going? And then, what is the length of the process? Does it vary depending on where you feel, okay, I got to a point, so how is that process?
I work on multiple canvases usually because it's all oil, so it takes a while to dry. So there's that. I just have to move on, right? And sometimes I'll get stuck or I'll stall on a piece and I'll set it aside for a while. Sometimes it's been known to set aside for a few months or something like that. Or I just, even before coming up here at the studio, I have a pretty large studio. So I have the space to do it, work on quite large pieces. I have works now waiting for me when I get back, and I'll be interested, having not seen them. They're all at very early stages, so it's going to be very confrontive because there's a lot to resolve. So it's going to be a bit of a slog. So sometimes I'll even, when I work in the studio, the one I'm working on, I'll have on the wall that I paint on, I have my paint cart and all this, and I have no other paintings in view because I just want complete focus, and I want to be influenced by other work, even though it's my work. So that you get that focus, because it's just too much to take in. If you have a painting and you're working on it, there's another painting that you're also going to get back to soon. It's just too much information, Yeah.
So you don't start with pencil or charcoal or anything like that. You just paint on the canvas and start working on it.
Absolutely, because with oil, it's just my medium, and I've worked with oil for over 30 years. And when I first started with oil, I just took to it. So once in a while I'll do a little acrylic and so forth, but so I essentially will sketch with oil. Early on in my career, I did a lot of works on paper just with oil, and why not sketch with oil? It's a great way of also, because there's places on here that must have 10 layers of paint, different colors over time, you know how it goes, right? So, and I love that richness. In fact, all the canvases I have painted with at least 5 coats of gesso. They come with gesso, and then I have 5 layers of gesso painted on top. Because I want to build, I don't want to see the texture of the canvas so much. I want a rich surface. And then the last coat of gesso is black. You can buy black gesso, jet black gesso. And what I like about that is I want to build up the light. I don't want to try to knock out the white of a white canvas. I like to start dark and build the light myself. I just end up with a much richer, and even though, I mean, you think, wow, this was a black canvas, all these were jet black. And I just feel like then I'm completely responsible for and building up the light.
Do you recall on any of these, what was the last mark you made?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, wow.
I didn't attend.
These got shipped up here a while ago, so it's been a little while, but I'd be making it. I can remember sections that came later, or there were sections where maybe this was dark like this, but then also this was really dark, and I just realized it was just too heavy on the bottom, so that came later, that kind of thing. Well, thank you for that question, because it makes me think of something that I think is really, when I work on a piece, and maybe this is a universal thing, when I start out, it's very, it's full of promise, right? You're attacking a big canvas, you're throwing the paint on, and there's something very physical about it, and so forth, and you build up, and then you have a lot going on, and then you gotta make sense of it all, right? You gotta kind of make a lot of decisions, a lot, and sometimes there's structural issues that are problematic. One thing I do, I'll even turn a canvas upside down because I'm left-handed, and I don't want to have this bias, or we all kind of make marks a certain way, even though we try not to. So one trick to avoid that is midway I'll flip it and work on it a while upside down and flip it back, so that there's just a different vibe going on. Side fondling is obvious, but I guess he's right-handed actually like that. So I do that, but so back to, I think this is really interesting. So you start out, like I said, promise, and then you hit this wall, right? And it's a lot of decision making. It's a lot of grunt work. It feels like, because you're really trying to. I'll come home to Steve and I'll say, I feel like I'm a little type of nudging this huge ocean liner. Just with every paintbrush, I'm just nudging and pushing. But then you get to that point where you've improved it. It's becoming something. It has a cohesive feel, and it's saying something. It has this feeling, and then it gets really exciting again, because then you're kind of now on the downslope. The wind's at your back, and now at that point, I'm doing all the little extra things to enhance, and then they tend to be little smaller touches and so forth, and it starts to sing, and that's when I feel like God. I mean, my version of God or whatever. It's just a real high, and that's very exciting. That's really fun. Martin, anything else? Yeah.
Who are some of your favorite artists that you would go to for inspiration?
So early in my career, I was really Willem de Kooning and Richard Diebenkorn, are great, and a lot of others, but I'll just throw those two out. Early I looked at work and studied other people's work a lot. Now I don't. I really don't, because I want to have my own. I don't want to be influenced. I have so much to kind of say and deal with in a path forward on my own work that I don't look at other people's work that much. I mean, I did go to the museum while we're here and we're talking about that, but I think there's a point at which you should, personally, this is just for me, kind of limit that and really kind of hone in on, because that's where your best work is going to come out of, I think, is out of isolation, and kind of find what you seem to keep kind of coming back to on your own, and not like, oh, I saw that painting today. I think I'll try that trick or whatever that looks like.
So I was just wondering if you picked these pieces, because when I looked at it online, I thought so many of them reminded me of Seattle,
Oh.
the Northwest.
So when I first started showing at Foster Y, everyone here kept hearing, "Oh, this has to be a Northwest artist. It's obvious, we can tell." Not really, you know, but I think what you're hitting on is that there's a universality of forms that you know, we could maybe, if these were shown in Peru, people would say, "Oh, this is very kind of the, you know, it looks like it's from," you know, there's a universalness about that, I think. Is that your question? Yeah, I do feel a Northwest vibe with these two.